problem is how to communicate the insights which historians have and literary writers have made, and how to communicate this to a wider public.
So that's my next question to Tomasz is, how do you do this at the Auschwitz Jewish Center every day? And tell us a little bit about the programming and whom you serve. And
well, we have various programs, but the programs for the Polish students was one program called My Former Neighbors, which is about the Jewish history and Jewish traditions, and this attracts a lot of interest from among the teachers and students. Then we also have an anti-discrimination program, which is mostly what I call applied history. So as I mentioned, how do we apply the lessons from what happened to the contemporary dangers of xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and other forms of xenophobia. And this is also towards Polish students, Polish high school students, but we also serve German students visiting the site, visiting Oświęcim, Auschwitz, and also a lot of Jewish visitors who come to Auschwitz, but also who come to the center and can learn about this place and the history of Oświęcim as a place, as a town, which also has a Jewish history, which I think for a long time was to a great extent forgotten, overshadowed by what happened at Auschwitz. So in a sense, Oświęcim is I think, it symbolizes what Poland is for many people outside, that it is the cemetery. Of course, in the case of Oświęcim, it's really the symbol. It is the cemetery, but at the same time, even next to the cemetery, there was a Jewish life, a thriving Jewish life, 60% Jewish before the war, and it was a normal town. And that's a challenge for many people who come to learn that this did not happen in the middle of nowhere. It did not happen, and it's not like a black hole. It is a normal town. It was a normal town, and today, after the Holocaust, it continues to be a town. And it is challenging to many visitors, this understanding and this realization of this.
You're at Rabbi, so you teach. How do you deal with these issues of Jewish history and Polish public?
Okay. Well, my main goal, the main reason why I'm in Poland, is to teach Judaism to Jews. And that still does occupy a good percentage of my time, whether it be basic Judaism, whether it be for those who already discovered 20 years ago have advanced questions. But when I remember, 18 years ago, when I started to deal with Polish, Jewish, Polish relations, one of the things I tried to emphasize was that we ought to try to feel the pain of the other side, which might sound very negative, but there is so much pain, certainly that the Jews come with, and also there's a lot of pain that non-Jewish Poles experienced during World War II and under the communists. So the first thing I try to emphasize is try to look at it from the other side. I'm still waiting for the day when I could start to say if we could try to feel the joy of the other side. But I think we'll get there. Another very challenging thing is that we Jews tend to view Poland as in 1939. And I think that Professor Polonsky really spelled it out very well. 35 to 39 was a very hard time for Polish-Jewish relations. Maybe in some ways the worst time. But it got frozen. Polish-Jewish relations were in the freezer for 50 years. There was no significant opportunity for real Polish-Jewish contact. There were contacts, but creative, normal, daily, as was true for nearly 1,000 years, didn't exist for 50 years. And then all of a sudden, after 50 years, come 1989, we could take this relationship out of the freezer, and it's very frozen. It takes a while to thaw. But in the last let's say the last 20 years, two things have happened that are very important, that have changed, or there are many factors, but I see actually one very important factor that changed the dynamics of Polish non-Jewish and Polish-Jewish relations, and that simply is the papacy and the legacy of John Paul II, who fought was the most effective person who fought against anti-Semitism in the last 2,000 years. Where he makes the statement that anti-Semitism is a sin. If you want to understand Jesus, you have to understand Judaism, etc., 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 etc. What he said at the note at the Western Wall, many other examples. And that has made a huge impact on the Catholic world and made an even more significant impact on his home country of Poland. Now, unfortunately, not everyone in Poland has listened to the teachings, has not listened yet to the teachings of John Paul II. But many people take it very seriously.
Everywhere in Europe where we had the experience of Nazi occupation, there is a problem of how to come to terms with the legacy of Nazism. And of course, the first place where this was most obvious was in Germany itself, and there's been a long process there. This process of coming to terms with the, in quotation marks, dark past was interrupted in Poland by the communist period. The communists instrumentalized attitudes towards National Socialism. National Socialism, in communist theory, is the highest form of capitalism. All workers and proletarians are oppressed by this. To distinguish between those people who are oppressed, between Jews and non-Jews, is to undermine the solidarity of those fighting to establish a socialist world. So for a long time, this issue was discussed in Poland seriously in the period 44 to 46. But it was stopped. The Polish League for the Struggle Against Racism, which was founded by Władysław Bartoszewski, was not allowed to deal with anti-Semitism and had to deal with the position of African Americans in the south of the United States. But the key turning points in the Polish debate about the Polish behavior during the Second World War, and this is an internal Polish debate, are firstly the publication by Jan Błoński in March of 1988 of his article, The Poor Poles Look at the Ghetto, which called for a new look at Polish behavior and which stressed the Polish failure to help the Jews, partly because of the isolation of the Jews, the fact that conditions for integration hadn't taken place, and partly because of the rise of anti-Semitism in the 1930s. And the second turning point was the big debate about Jedwabne, sparked off by the publication first of the Polish edition and then of the English edition of Jan Gross's Neighbors. What has happened as a result of these debates is that there are really two camps in the Polish historical profession. There is one camp which is strongly self-critical and which looks with great care and with great interest and subtlety at the difficulties of the Poles during the Second War and at the negative behavior of Poles. There is also still a significant apologetic camp which is well entrenched, for instance, in the Institute for National Memory, although things are changing there too. One of the problems in Poland, and this goes back to the communist period, is that these two camps don't by and large talk to each other. I don't believe that the position of the ethno-nationalists, people like Jan Żaryn or the late Janusz Kurtyka, are necessarily illegitimate. These are people with whom I disagree, but I don't believe that their views shouldn't be debated, and it would be better if there were more debate. What I think has happened in Poland in the last 10 years is firstly that these debates have become less explosive. The debate over Jan Gross's book Fear was much less explosive than the debate over Jedwabne. People realize that these matters can be discussed without the, in quotation marks, good name of Poland being damaged, that a mature and confident society looks at difficult pasts of its past. The Polish-Russian past is just one aspect of this. And secondly, although there is still a core of anti-Semitic attitudes linked with Radio Maria and Sama Obrona and the Liga Polskich Rodzin, the various right-wing political formations, what is more significant is there's a large core now of anti-Semitic people. When these anti-Semitic views are expressed, there is a very strong reaction to them. And this is very striking, I think, and a positive development. I think that, as I say, these debates have become less explosive and they are really now conducted by historians, which is the way it should be. The problem is how to communicate the products of these debates.